Welcome
Hi,
to Monday with the Mavens. Hello, you guys.
Coming at ya.
Yeah. We, man, we're talking about some real things today.
Oh, we're doing it, you guys.
We are. And so we'll just jump in. We are going to talk about changing the narrative because, we got some hearts already.
It's my friend Jolie.
My goodness, you guys, it is really unfortunate when we look around and we are...
Should we preempt? I kind of feel like we need to give a little disclaimer this morning.
Yeah.
Just ahead of
I think we
time.
need to give a lot of disclaimers this
Yeah.
morning. So we're going to talk about... how to become healthy humans. And we're talking about ourselves. We're talking about our kids. We are talking about how we are sick and tired of seeing people sick and tired. And we are also not above it at all. And so there is nothing wrong with enjoying the things that you love here and there, fitting them in. And we'll talk about how we ourselves absolutely do that. However, when every day it becomes part of your lifestyle or of kids' lifestyles to be constantly ingesting things like soda and seed oils and
Candy sugar.
all the S's.
All the S's.
Yeah, sugar, soda,
Oh.
and seed oils.
Sorry. I was like, I didn't know what the S's were.
Yeah.
Is that a thing? Is that like...
It's
Is
our
that...
thing.
Okay. All the S's.
All the S's. It just sets us up to not be our best. It sets us up to be prepared to develop disease. And I'm gonna try not to be too soapboxy because there are so many things I could do better and there are so many things that my kids could do better. But we have got to change something because the numbers just keep increasing. Like childhood and adult obesity numbers keep going through the roof. Like it's insane. I think I read just during the pandemic itself, childhood obesity rates went up over 20%.
There's 380 million adolescents and children who are considered obese.
And you guys, it's not about looking a certain aesthetic. Like healthy looks different on everyone. Like it absolutely looks different on everyone. It's about feeling like you can do the things in life that you want to do. It's about waking up as a kid or an adult without pain. It's about not having to be worried about what you can or can't be a part of because you either physically can't or you don't have the mental capacity or the energy to do it. Like it's shorting yourself at life for some instant gratification. And man, sugar, alcohol, like there's a lot of it. They're addictive, and like I'm not immune to it by any means, but we've got to change something.
Yeah. So the disclaimer is that we might get some haters on here, and that's
Yeah.
okay because not everybody can like us. Although I'd like to think that everybody
we
likes
want
us.
everybody to.
But I do think that sometimes this can be a touchy subject, especially when you talk about kids and kids' health, and because all of that honestly falls on the parents. And I can attest to having teenagers and what it's like to parent teenagers and to try to teach them the things that they need to know to be the healthiest versions of themselves. And it isn't always easy. They make a lot of their food decisions now. And so I think a lot of the grunt work has to be done, when they're younger, and teaching them good habits. But yeah, just so you guys know, like we are not shaming anybody.
No.
Like to each their own. And we just want you guys to be armed with the tools and the education that you need to make the best decisions for you and your family. And so if this is something that's important to you, stick around and listen. If not, feel free to, I don't even know, swipe, unwatch, whatever it is. It won't hurt our feelings. But we really mean all of the things that we say are done with love and compassion. And we just want people to do well.
We do. And, Haley mentioned, and we've mentioned this before, like we're both moms. I have two boys. My boys are 10 and 12. Haley has a daughter that's 14 and a son that's 16. And, we're always learning and shifting. And there's no one right way to do it. And, like, we get that. And you guys might have great ideas that we've never thought of. And so by all means, please share. If you guys have questions along the way, even if it's off topic, please always feel free to put them in the question box. But I just think, and I mentioned his stories earlier, if you had a chance to see him, or maybe you haven't, but I was down in Southern California this last week, and I will be the first to say, because it was a vacation with just, Betsy, no, my dog was drinking my water.
I thought I heard some laughing going on right there.
I wasn't even paying attention. And so I will be the first to say, like, it was vacation, and we absolutely fit things in.
She
like,
ate churros.
I ate churros and Dole Whips and ice cream. Like, I was at Disneyland, and so, like, I fit things in, and I enjoyed it, and I think that is okay. My boys fit things in. However, like, if it was an everyday thing, we would feel awful. And part of why we're talking about this today is I just, you do a lot of people watching, and I was watching a lot, and we were in Disneyland one day, and then we were at Great Wolf Lodge, and there were so many kids who were really uncomfortable, and it had nothing to do with the aesthetic. Like, I have to say that again, that is not what we're talking about. It had to do with the fact that they had a difficult time walking upstairs and not being completely out of breath. They were exhausted, like, midway into walking through Disneyland. Like, I recognize that's a lot of steps that not a lot of people are, but, like, they were, like, exhausted and fatigued and emotional. There were, a lot of adults that couldn't go on certain rides because they, like, were too wide to fit into the seats. Once again, it's not about the aesthetic. It's about having, like, reducing pain and being comfortable. And I think in our society anymore, we have to be so careful because people, of course, everybody wants acceptance, and that's not what this is about. It's about health.
Yeah.
It's about preventing disease so you can be there for the people that you love, because too much weight, too much fat, I should say, and once again, healthy looks different on everybody. So it's not about a particular weight, but too much fat on your body is going to lead, and we all need fat. Like, let me just say that. Like, there's also the opposite extreme, which we're not going to talk about today, but excessive weight, excessive fat, I should say, it leads to disease. It leads to, heart disease. It leads to diabetes. It leads to certain types of cancers. It leads to breathing disorders. And we're seeing so many kids that are developing type 2 diabetes at a much younger age, that have extreme metabolic disorders, and it starts there. And so, and we have to set the example.
Yeah.
And
it's new. This is a new phenomenon. Like, this wasn't a problem before the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution happened.
Just drink water, my
yeah,
dog drinks.
she totally, she lets her dog lick her face probably too. So anyway, before the Industrial Revolution, most people were growing their own food and were pretty self-sustained in that way. And even if you weren't, the food you were purchasing from the grocery store or the market was usually local, and it wasn't being shipped from all over the world to us. It wasn't processed like it is now. And so food is easy, food is fast, and honestly, the majority of the food that is accessible to the majority of people is not great for us. And that's when the problem starts. And I can attest to it as I worked in the school system as a teacher for, 100 years. Okay, not that long, but a long time. And I saw it constantly, like little kids, kindergartners, 5 years old, coming in, and they wouldn't want to go to recess because they didn't feel good playing at recess because they were heavy, and and kids are mean. Like, kids would tease them and different things like that. And it's like, it's really hard, like, as a teacher and as a mom, to see kids struggle in that way when it doesn't have to be that way. Now, yes, there are absolutely circumstances where, a kid has a metabolic disorder and they can't help it, or there's something genetically going on to where they tend to carry more fat and more weight, and that is not what we're talking about, because really what we're talking about are the things that we can control.
Yeah.
And often I think that I know I don't, as parent, as a mom, like, there are certain things that, like, there are battles that just aren't worth fighting in my house. Food is not one of those for me. Food, and my kids, she's around here running around somewhere, she will attest that, like, food has always been something that we've talked about, and, like, we educate our kids from, like, the get-go. Yes, my kids were given, cake on their first birthday, and they were not, like, I don't know, like, I don't want people to think that, like, my kids don't ever get treats. Like, For one,
My kids probably honestly get treats more than they still should.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, my kids are 14 and 16. Like, my son has his driver's license and he goes to the store, and I won't even tell you how many candy wrappers are in his car. But what I hope, and this is what I've come to the conclusion of, at least with my kids, is they have been given a foundation, an education from when they were very young about what healthy eating looks like. And they know that, and when we do a good job, when they're home for dinner, you know, every night, and they're home for lunch, and they're eating their food at home with us, they feel really good for the most part. And it's when they then make decisions on their own to, you know, go to a party or have a bunch of garbage and do that. And they'll tell me, they'll be like, man, Mom, I feel gross. Yeah. And that's what we want. We want our kids to feel good most of the time, so that then when they branch off and make decisions, or they get treats or whatever it is, that their body feels it. The problem is the majority of kids these days, and people, adults too, the norm is eating garbage. And so you don't even know what it feels like to fuel your body properly, to feel really good. Yeah. And so you don't even realize that the garbage that you're feeding yourself, and that normal feeling of like waking up sleepy, groggy, not having energy throughout the day, painful joints, lack of energy, sleeping poorly, all of those
fuzzy
things.
Cognitive
those
function.
are all symptoms of poor nutrition. And so that's what we want to shift. We want to shift the narrative from, you know, eat all of this easy, quick food.
It's a pleasure playground.
Yeah. And, you know, there's just a lot to say.
There is. And I do want to just say, because one thing I try to be really careful of in our house, even though I don't have young girls, I have young boys, but I still think that we have to be careful of any type of like body dysmorphia. And we've always tried to talk about food in a way that we associate with how we feel, not necessarily with how we look.
Yeah, always.
Because, and it's the truth. And so my oldest, wonderful little man, like I mean, of course we all love our kids, but
like, she loves him. Don't worry.
I adore my boys. But he's on a spectrum. You wouldn't necessarily know it anymore. I mean, he's come so far if you just met him right now. But food plays a profound effect on his ability to, like, be his best self. And that's true for all of us. But in him, you can see it so quickly. And so in teaching him, and we let him he's 12 now, and so we let him make a lot of his own decisions and like really determine like how does that make him feel. And he knows it. Like, if he's having too much sugar or nitrates or, you know, processed foods or inflammatory oils or those sorts of things, like, he feels it in how he functions cognitively. You can see it in his nervous system, and it does that to all of us. It's just more apparent in some people that already have a little bit of a setback from a nervous system standpoint. And so every time we put something in our mouth, you guys, we are either giving ourselves fuel and medicine, like from a food perspective, or poison. And that doesn't mean, I know we have to be careful about good foods and bad foods and all of the things, but it's true. Like, we have a choice. Now, do I choose and do my kids choose to have, you know, things that are not maybe fueling or healing our bodies? Yes, we make
you
that
guys,
choice.
if you were here last week, there was a whole bake-off happening in our kitchen. And, you know, we ate the waffles and the chocolate bugs, and
It is, but nutrition can heal a large majority of ailments. You guys, it absolutely can. Like, if we are properly fueling our bodies, and if we're reducing or eliminating things like grains, dairies, sugars, like the inflammatory foods, and we're getting proper nutrition, like, over time, our bodies will naturally regulate and heal themselves. Like, it will happen. Now, is it going to present 100% of disease? No. But I love that quote, and it's a powerful one, and I'm probably not going to get it right, but it's like, genes load the gun, but nutrition pulls the trigger, or something like that. And it's so true in that, like, genetically we are predisposed to certain things, but what makes us mutate genetically in a negative way is the fuel and food that we feed ourselves. And so if we can start shifting that, we can prevent the large majority of disease And or if we've already started down that path, we can start reversing it.
Yeah.
Like, it can happen.
That's what's so exciting is like,
Yeah.
and I think that there's so much hope in what we're talking about, even though it feels and it sounds like, you know, this deep, dark world of, you know, childhood obesity and not feeling well and being healthy. But I think that what is hopeful is like, it's all fixable. And it's fixable in like really the most simplest ways. Is what we put in our mouth. Now, as a parent and, you know, talking about kids, it's not always easy to get your kids to eat the things that we think that they should eat, right? That's hard. And I think that it is 7 times a person, adult or child, needs to try something before their mind will actually determine whether or not they like it or not. So like if you give a kid a piece of broccoli for the first time and they spit it out, they don't like it. Well, you shouldn't just stop giving it to them and be like, oh, well, the only thing my kid wants to eat is ice cream. Uh-oh, we're paused over on one side. Oh, you just disconnected us. We're still going over here.
Okay, I'm going to reconnect us over here.
Sorry, guys.
No, I think we're good.
Oh, yay.
We're back. Sorry about that,
Sorry.
you guys.
Anyway, it takes like 7 tries. So like if your kid spits out the broccoli the first time, well, don't just decide, well, my child doesn't like broccoli, you know, as an infant. Instead, try again later and keep trying. And honestly, and I feel like it's the same way with teenagers. Like my daughter will eat something. I just started
liking broccoli. I just started liking broccoli.
And let me tell you something.
And
if
I love
you
it.
saw her stories, half of her plate was broccoli.
I love roasted broccoli.
Yeah,
now.
she likes it.
Yeah.
But even with like my teenagers, like my daughter will be like, "Oh, I don't like that," and I'm like, "What? This was your favorite food like a month ago. Like, give it another try." You know. And I think that even as adults, we have to tell ourselves like, "Oh, maybe you think you don't like mushrooms. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe she needs to try them again." Maybe you need to try them again. Thanks. Maybe I'll make them for you, and you'll love them.
I'll try them.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I feel like I was getting a little off topic. Anyway, all that's to say is I think that like we shouldn't give up on our kids that quickly. Yeah. Yes, my daughter and my son love macaroni and cheese. They love it.
Gosh, my son loves it.
Do they get to eat it every single day? No, they don't. Do they get to eat it sometimes? Absolutely. Like, yeah, for sure. They can buy it and make it themselves. In fact, story time. The other day, we were sitting at the counter, my son and daughter and I, and we were just having a conversation, and Asa, he's 16, he goes to his car, comes back, and has like a packet of like the 10-cent ramen. Like ramen.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Where did you get that? And he's like, Ray's. Like, he went to the store and bought it. And then my daughter was like, hey, do you have any more? And he's like, yeah, my glove box. In my glove box. My kid is keeping ramen in his glove box. So she goes out, and so they're just sitting in my kitchen eating ramen with me, and I'm like, you guys are so weird. And they're like, Mom, it's good. And I remember liking that in high school. And anyway, but later on, and this is the kicker, about an hour after they ate it, they were both, for one, so thirsty.
Yeah.
And they could not like drink enough water to save their lives, and they both felt like garbage. And I was like, you guys, do you see what's happening? Like, is there a better choice? Like, what is a good substitute for ramen? You know, because there is a substitute for all of those things. And it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, they don't have to never have ramen again for the rest of their lives. That's not what we're saying. But like, it doesn't need to be a staple, and it should be something that is a treat to them. It's the same thing. Like, I have a piece of chocolate every day. Is the chocolate like is special to me every day? Like, today, is it as special as it was to me yesterday? Not really, because I have it every day.
Yeah.
If I stopped, in fact, maybe I should do this, and I stopped allowing myself to have it every day, then when I did have it, it would become so much more special.
Yeah. And I think that we don't have to overcomplicate it. And I think maybe we'll jump into some like basics, because food can still taste really good, and you can have things on hand, because I think a lot of times the reasons that we allow ourselves and our kids to have some of these things is out of convenience.
Yeah, it's ease.
And there are other alternatives and options that can be just as convenient. But I do think just the starting place is having a conversation, as long as you two are willing to start making some of those shifts, because we have to lead by example. Like, we absolutely have to lead by example. But I think the conversation starts with the impact that food has on the way that we feel and the way that we function and the way that our brain works, and leading us towards a life where we can do the things that we want to, because that's really what it adds up to. And talking about like as a family, I just had this discussion with my boys coming back from California. We were way more lenient, and we were talking about, okay guys, this is a really good time to like regroup, because Hudson, especially my oldest, was like, oh, like I had a ton of fun. He's like, but man, my brain just like feels foggy. And you know, behaviorally, he's not as affected by food anymore, but he just doesn't feel his best, and his nervous system doesn't work as well. He doesn't sleep as well. It's all the same thing. So it's really, we talk all the time about getting back to basics with nutrition, with sleep, with stress, with gratitude, with sunlight. And honestly, if we can start openly talking with our kids about why we're doing what we are doing and what we're trying to achieve, they naturally will have a curiosity and want to start shifting also. It also takes a little bit of time, like Haley was saying, as far as like trying foods. But if our palates and our taste buds are used to excessively sweet foods, it takes a little bit of time to start shifting that. And I mean, I am like a recovering sugar addict. Like I really am. And it makes me feel awful, but I love the way that it tastes.
And this is really interesting.
Yeah.
Just to interrupt you for a second.
Please.
They've done brain scans on people under the influence of cocaine, and then they have taken, in fact, you can probably Google it, and then they've given somebody sugar, and the brain lights up in the same places in the same way as somebody on cocaine. It is like crazy, you guys. Yeah. Sugar, and I can say this too because I'm not even going to call myself a recovering sugar addict, because there are still times when I really, really struggle. But I think that...
Hence the word recovering.
Constant recovery.
Yeah.
But I think that, you know, we don't even realize how food is addictive. Yeah. Food companies, they know it, you know, and there's like, I can't remember what it's called. It's like the sweetness point of food, to where like it ignites your brain in certain places, and it causes, you know, this dopamine and serotonin response in our brains that makes us want more, and then we crave it and we want it, and the food industry knows this, and they take advantage of it, and that's part of the problem too. That's a whole other that's like a whole other like TED Talk that we'll give another time.
Allison over on Instagram said Dirty Jeans by Dr. Ben Lynch. That's excellent if you guys haven't read it. I think that Ben Lynch also, and Allison, correct me if I'm wrong, he has a podcast also, I think. But one thing that, you know, I found, and I've known this for a long time, but especially when Hudson was younger and we were like really on a quest to figure out like everything that we could do to give him the best possible foundation for like a thriving life. And obviously we all want that for our kids, but I think sometimes when our kids have maybe more apparent special needs, like we are desperate. And I will say, out of all of the things that we have done with Hudson, nutrition was the number one thing that we shifted that had a huge impact on his ability to be his best self. And you know, we've done gut testing on him and a number of things, and there is a rise in autism, there's a rise in ADHD, there's a rise in all of these things among kids. And I really believe that a large majority of the symptoms can be, to a degree, managed, reversed, assisted by nutrition alone. And that's a big statement, but it makes a profound difference when you are fueling the body and the brain. And that goes for every human. It's just, once again, can be more apparent in those that have certain struggles and have nutrient deficiencies, and their nervous systems are more easily affected by things like sugar and inflammatory things like seed oils and grains and all of those things. So we're going to get into the nitty gritty. We did just have... let's see, Jolie said, I love this conversation. Just wanted to say that my 16-year-old decided to do a paleo diet to feel better and also to clear up her skin. And when she went to school, all of her friends told her that it was a gateway to anorexia. I think there's so much misinformation about eating clean and watching what you put in your body, especially at the high school age. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. There's so much misinformation. And like, if you're new to our weekly TED Talks... like, we are not about living in a deficit long term, regardless of age. Like, our goal is that you are fueling your body and your brain, but everybody starts somewhere different, and that's for kids as well. Like, we don't want kids to, be worried about counting calories or doing different things. What we want is for them to recognize what foods are going to fuel their body and their brain, what helps them feel their best, what helps them perform their best, what's going to help them grow into the best version of themselves as an adult as possible, what's going to prevent them from getting out of bed and having pain as they get older, what's going to prevent them from developing these diseases that can be avoided for the most part with food, with proper food. Like, it's a conversation that needs to happen.
Well, and I think too, along with that is because it is touchy. Like, oh my goodness, there are things like that I tiptoe around as a parent, with my kids, and even my daughter this morning. She and I were listening to a podcast on our way here. And it was talking about like childhood obesity, because I wanted a few facts in my pocket and, some of the leading causes of it. And I was asking her, I was like, well, do you see problems with this at school? Like, do you see problems with, we talk about anorexia, and there's certain things that like are real trigger points, especially if you have girls. It tends to be more problems with girls. But, and she does. There are a lot of kids with body dysmorphia issues, with poor self-esteem when it comes to how they look. And like Emmy and I, typically we don't have teenage clients. Like, it's not, the real change has to happen with the parents.
Yeah.
And then, it is our job as parents to take the best care as we can for our own children. That was a weird sentence, but we have to take care of our kids. Yeah. But if we aren't taking care of ourselves, like, that comes first, right?
Yeah.
And so anyway, it is so touchy, and there's so much misinformation. And so, as adults and parents, we have to be the first line of defense for our kids and to teach our kids. Like, Julie, I think it's wonderful that your daughter wants to get control of her skin, and that, going at it from a nutritional standpoint should absolutely be the first step for her. And I sure hope that, her friends would support her in that and not see it as like trying to restrict herself, to get thin or to look a certain way, but, to take control of her health. And honestly, like, that's what I tell my kids. I'm like, I'm not eating this to get skinny. That is not my point. It is never about how I look. It is always about how I feel. And if we can shift the way we talk about food, and instead of it being like, that's going to make you fat, or I'm eating this so I can get skinny, or I'm on a diet, or all of those words, like, it should all be about like, I'm choosing to eat this because this is what's going to make me feel good.
Yeah.
And that's like bottom line for me. Like,
and we talk about that with our clients a fair amount, because, a lot of us do have younger kids, and whether we do or don't, or we have maybe, I'm really fortunate to have this not be the case, but a lot of my clients have like judgmental family members and or friends that are like, why are you doing that? Like, why are you? And I honestly think it's hard to argue with simply saying, I'm doing this for a season because I'm figuring out what fuels me and helps me feel my best. Like, you can't argue with that,
right? Everybody wants to feel good.
And honestly, most people do come to us initially for aesthetic changes. Like, that's what's motivating them. But then they start feeling better. And we want the narrative, especially with youth, to be about learning that food can be a powerful tool in helping them feel really good.
Yeah.
And what does that look like? And so I do think we should, we've talked a lot about the problem, but we can start talking about like some really simple solutions. And I think first and foremost, we've talked about simply having the conversation and just being like a constant narrative, not to where it's like obsessive, but like we're constantly having a narrative in our house, like trying new foods, like eating, going back to like eating the rainbow, talking about, I think I can safely say our opinion, like how backwards the traditional food pyramid is, like talking about the role of the different macronutrients, like why are proteins important, why are fats important, why are carbohydrates important, what do they do in your body? You don't have to get that technical. Really, it comes down to, hey guys, like food has a profound impact on the way that we feel. And interestingly, like when we eat more of these foods or we incorporate these foods in our meals, it can help our brains work better. It can help our performance work better. Yeah. It can help prevent disease. And when we eat some of these foods consistently, it can actually make it so our brains don't work as good, our sleep doesn't work as good, our skin breaks out more, it can lead to disease. So we just want to make sure that we use them in moderation. Like, and just having that conversation about like truly the functionality of the body and brain.
And it comes up in my house constantly. So my kids are super active. And then obviously they're in high school. And so like if my son has a test and I know about it in the morning, I'll be like, hey, he'll even come to me and be like, hey mom, I need I need some protein this morning. He's heard me talk. He knows that like, okay, if you fuel yourself properly in the morning, then you're going to perform better cognitively throughout the day. So that's just it's simple. If my kids have something going on, if they have a sporting event, I'll ask them, I'm like, hey, are you ready? Did you get a good night's sleep? What do you want for breakfast? How do you think that you should fuel your body for your soccer game or your ski race or your test? And I'm kind of this running like account of like, oh, you have a test, you better, here's a boiled egg, or, make sure that you eat something with protein and at lunchtime, or I'll ask them. You just have to be proactive as a parent, especially when your kids are older and making those decisions themselves. I ask my son almost daily, where did you have lunch today? What did you eat? And those types of things. Yeah. And you just have to be involved. And I don't know. I think that my kids probably think I'm super annoying, but they hear it over.
She's a great relationship with her kids.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean they don't think I'm annoying.
Well,
like,
I mean,
they totally do. I know they do, and it's fine.
They actually think she's pretty cool.
Well, they can think I'm annoying. I don't mind. I don't mind if they think I'm annoying. But I think that like the things that I say, they come back and you hear them later on, and they'll start like, how kids are. They try to like coach each other. Like, oh, Berkeley, you have this. Well, you better eat some protein. And they'll mock me in that way. But I'm like, the seed has been planted, And so you don't have to like sit down and have a TED Talk with your kid about it. You can if you want to, if they learn that way. But not just being the example, but talking about it openly, talking about nutrition openly with your kids is like step one, I think.
Yeah. I actually... Yeah, I'll share this. I
like there was a pause and she thought about it because she wasn't going to share it with us.
Well, because I feel like it shows a little bit of dysfunction, but I think that it's good to be transparent about that.
We all have a little bit of dysfunction in us.
Oh, I have plenty. But my youngest, Scout, he's 10. He just turned 10. So this last year in school, he would have been 9. And he would come home and like this is a whole nother discussion, but using treats as a constant celebration in school is a whole nother subject, or in life in general. But he does enjoy a treat here and there, and I was like, hey, make a decision if you want it, that's totally fine. But what I found him doing is that he would say no thank you at school, and he'd bring it home and eat it in private. And and I was like, Scouty, if you're gonna have it, like have it publicly, like there's no shame in that. He's like, well, I'm trying to set a good example. I'm like, but you're not actually setting the example. Like, you're not, like, don't try to pretend you're something that you're not.
Yeah.
And so I was like, it's okay to like enjoy that once in a while and say no thank you otherwise, but then don't take it home and be a closet eater. Like, what I don't want to do is have him go down a path, and that's why I was hesitant in sharing that, because I don't want him to go down a path where like he feels like he has to hide anything. He wasn't hiding it from me. He was hiding it from his peers. And I was like,
he's also very like good is good and bad is bad.
Yeah,
like very much
black
that
and
way.
white. Yeah. And so I was like, if you're gonna have it, like have it and own it and enjoy it and move on.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't have to be. And so it's just this really interesting. Like, kids are so impressionable, and like I want to be really open and honest. Like I still, like, there are definitely things, like my relationship with food has improved a ton, and I'm still working on like the best approach and the best balance and like all of those things. But I know what fuels me best, and I know, I love Haley's example she always uses is the version of me tomorrow going to be thankful that I did this? And so you just make that constant decision, and it doesn't have to be this big deal. Like, over time, when you start fueling yourself, like, you're going to fit things in here and there, but you're going to want to fuel yourself with things that make you feel good, because you're going to want to sleep good at night. You're going to want to perform well in your workouts or whatever you may be doing. You're going to want to be able to say yes when somebody like says like, hey, you want to go do X, Y, and Z? You don't want to have to like feel like you have to train to go do something. Like, you want to be ready. Like, I want to be ready. Maybe you don't want to be, but like, everybody's different. Everybody has their things. Some of my clients is as simple as like, I want to ride bikes with my grandkids. I want to, or like, I want to be able to go like coach my daughter in soccer, whatever it may be. Like, everybody has their things, but we shouldn't limit ourselves because of how we're eating.
Yeah.
Like, we shouldn't.
Yeah, and really all kids should be able to play on the playground and have fun and have the energy to do it.
Or to be able to like stay on their feet for several hours in a day, or walk up a flight of stairs, or not, I don't know. It's so sad to me, and it's getting increasingly worse. And so I think first comes the conversation that we've talked about, and then it's slowly, and this is for adults and kids, it's slowly reducing the higher, like start with the lowest hanging fruit. And what
Soda
I mean by that,
and fruit juice. I mean, honestly, like,
Yeah.
if there was one thing, like only one thing that you could change about society as a whole, I think that would be my choice as far as nutrition goes, is like, soda is like so unnecessary, like 100% unnecessary. And it is a gigantic problem for so many people.
We should have brought this out. I should have measured out 16 teaspoons of sugar. It's a lot of sugar.
It's a lot.
1 can of soda. Maybe this has changed. It used to be 16 teaspoons of sugar per 1 can of soda. You guys, sugar is poison.
Slow poison. Since my kids were, this is sad, and maybe I'm causing some mental stuff with my kids, but when they were little, we would call it slow poison.
Yeah.
And I remember one time we were at the store. No, we were at a birthday party. Oh, this is really sad, but this is real. And my son, who's very black and white, he's actually a little bit more gray these days than he used to be, but he was like 4 or 5, and we were at a birthday party for one of his close buddies, and they were passing out cake, and he said, "Mama, can I have the slow poison today?" And I was like, so mortified, because I was like, oh my gosh. And I got some looks from the moms or whatever, but anyway, but that's what it is. It's slow poison. And my kids have always, and I'll ask them, or they will ask me like, "Hey, can I have a soda?" And I was like, "Oh, some slow poison," or I call it cancer in a can. That's probably bad too. But anyway, that soda and fruit juice, like, honestly, like,
it's going to spike your glucose so
fast.
And you guys, having that mid-afternoon lull is not normal.
No.
Like, if you hit 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon and you're feeling sluggish and tired and want to take a nap, like, it's not normal. Like, we should be able to have sustained energy, both physically and cognitively, throughout the day.
Yeah.
And honestly, what that typically is an imbalanced lunch. It's a spike in your blood sugar or in your glucose, and then a crash. And it doesn't have to be that way. Like, you can have that high, sustained energy, clear mind, like, all throughout the day.
And it doesn't take long to shift it. If you are a chronic, like, afternoon, like, crasher, it honestly takes, like, I don't know, I would venture to say 1 or 2 days of shifting your nutrition before you're like, whoa, I've got all this energy throughout the day. Like, maintain steady energy throughout the day. And it's really 100%.
It sometimes does take longer for people if, like, if you're starting to eliminate things, you might feel worse before you feel better.
That's true. That is totally true.
And that is
it's
normal.
your body ridding itself of all of the toxic grossness.
It is. And I think, like, in addition, we talked about, it just came up, like, the S's earlier. So, sugar, which is a huge part of soda pop.
Is that what you say? Do you call it soda pop?
I do. What do you call it?
I think I just call it soda.
Soda pop?
Nope, I don't call it pop. Soda pop. Just soda. What do you call it? Is it soda? I think it's very colloquial.
Soda pop. Soda pop. Is that like...
Sometimes I just like to be quiet and let her go.
So soda, seed oils, which we've talked about a lot, like, it basically comes down to processed foods. You guys, like, if we could eliminate seed oils. So, it's things like vegetable oil, like, they create so much inflammation, low-grade chronic inflammation in the body that leads to disease. Like, simply shifting out to use things like avocado oil,
coconut oil,
olive oil, coconut oil, like, they're fats that your body can break down and utilize that are going to support you hormonally, that are not going to lead you towards a disease state. And so, like, reducing sugar, reducing seed oils, and then soda pop is sugar, but, like, it comes down to the processed foods. So things with, like, dyes, nitrates, sugars, like, if we can stick with whole food, and then we don't have to do this 100% of the time, but those are the small shifts that can start being made. So, like, using some tangible examples in the morning, if your kids or you are used to starting the day with a glass of orange juice, think about having a whole piece of fruit instead. So,
or have an egg first, eat your eggs and bacon first, and then have a little bit of orange juice later.
But a lot of humans, I won't even just say kids, are starting their days with things like orange juice, bagels, cereal. Like what that's doing is you are doing all simple carbohydrates out of the gate, and you are getting an immediate glucose spike. You are not going to be your best self for the hours after that. So if you can start, not to say that carbohydrates are not bad in themselves, but if you can work with more complex carbohydrates and you can start your plate with something like protein and fat, you're going to be more satiated. And then also you're not going to get the glucose spike, because then you can follow with your complex carbohydrates. So talking about like some simple meals in the morning, like Haley just said, like going back to basics. So have some eggs, have some bacon, have some turkey sausage, have some veggies if your kids are open to it, or whole fruit. Or if you're going to do grains, consider something like a sourdough or an Ezekiel, because your body's going to break it down easier. You don't have to like all of a sudden like eat all vegetables for breakfast or anything like that. Like it doesn't have to be too complicated, but try not to have exclusively things like fruit juice, cereals, bagels, oatmeal with a bunch of brown sugar. Like set yourself up first thing, if you do eat in the morning, with something that's going to satiate you and that's going to balance your body and your brain, and start your kids that way too. And it could be a slow shift, or if they're used to having something to drink, maybe consider doing a whole fruit smoothie with some type of a tasty protein in it. And
you can throw a scoop of peanut butter or almond butter in a smoothie, handful of spinach, throw a scoop of protein powder in there also. Like my kids love when my kids make smoothies now, like it, for one, like there's hardly anything like,
but use whole fruit. Don't use fruit juice in them.
No. Don't use juice.
Gotta get the fiber from the fruit.
There's no need for that.
Yeah.
Throw some frozen berries, some almond milk, a scoop of peanut butter, and some vanilla protein powder, and some. Did I say almond milk? Mm-hmm. Yeah, or even water, and then blend it up. A handful of spinach in there, some fiber.
And they're not even going to know the vegetables are in there. And then they'll start actually making it and enjoying it. Like I use a green powder in my boys that just adds some micronutrients, but it doesn't turn it green. Like I use the frozen organic berry medley from Costco in there, and it's like they're getting a ton of antioxidants. I add protein to it. I add typically unsweetened coconut milk. Like I'll add the greens powder. Like they love it. It's good, and they're getting a ton of nutrients. Now they are getting a fair amount of carbohydrates from the fruit, but it's whole fruit and it's antioxidant rich fruit, and it's coupled with protein and fat.
Yeah. So win-win.
Yeah. And so like those are some, and if you guys have ideas for really healthy breakfasts too, like it doesn't have to be complicated. My boys like basics. So they like things like eggs, they like bacon, they like sausage, they like fruit, they like sourdough toast. Like they like all of those things. They like shakes.
Hey, my daughter, this is a good story.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a story. So she doesn't like eggs. Like, in fact, I might be the only one in my family who likes eggs. I love eggs.
Tyler likes eggs, but crispy, like dead.
Dehydrated.
Right? Yeah,
like
I
they
like
might
them
as
like
well.
that, too.
Yeah. Anyway, we don't need to get into the whole wet or dry egg discussion on here. I know how you feel and you know how I feel, and we can agree to disagree. Anyway, so my daughter typically does not like eggs, but I went to Target and I bought her a little mini waffle iron. They're like $10 at Target. And she heard from a friend of hers that if you like take an egg and you whip it up with some salt and pepper, and then you cook it in the little mini waffle iron, it makes a waffle egg.
And she likes them.
And she was like, it's like changed her life.
Oh,
so
I love that.
Anyway, sometimes it just needs to be presented in a cute way.
Yeah, I love that.
So you can go to Target, this is not sponsored, and get a little mini waffle maker and make waffle eggs.
I love that. Yeah. Will you remind me, I want to talk about this new fun summer kids routine that we're trying with our family.
Okay, fun summer kids routine.
Yeah.
Got it.
Because it goes back to the basics of like movement, nutrition, all of the things. Being outside,
That's a lot.
Sorry, it's a lot. She keeps me in check.
Well, sometimes you were just like,
I'll go like this. So, and then let's talk about some other things. Let's talk about lunch. Let's talk about dinners, because the other thing is we shouldn't need to make, now I am guilty of doing this sometimes, but we shouldn't need to make our kids different meals than we eat ourselves. Like
that is a touchy subject with a lot of people.
It is. And I will say, like, I do that sometimes. But even for like our clients, oftentimes they're like, gosh, I have to make a different dinner than I make the rest of the family. Like we do not want to make this complicated. Like figure out what you're going to have for dinner as a family, make it a family meal, track that first, and then work your breakfast and your lunch around it. It makes it so much easier. But there are a lot of foods, and I look back to like when I was a kid, like I ate what my mom made or I didn't eat. And like I'm not quite that stringent. But there's certain things that I will make that I just know my kids like will gag down, and other things that they love, you know? And so I do make some modifications here or there, but you can have a well-balanced family meal that can incorporate a lot of things. And so find some staples that your kids can either make themselves or that they can easily grab, that they can have on hand, so that they too are getting at least a moderate amount of protein, they're getting in some healthy fats, and that they're primarily getting their carbohydrates from things like whole fruit or veggies, however you can fit them in.
You don't need to weigh your kids' food.
No.
In fact, don't do that.
it.
Don't do that. Just make sure that they have a good balance of protein, carbs, and fat. That's really all it comes down to. And just make sure that, you know, the majority of their carbs are coming from complex carbs instead of simple carbs.
Yeah. It's really that simple. It's sticking with whole food whenever possible. So sticking with the perimeter of the grocery store, and looking at foods from the ground, foods that walk around, foods from the sea, foods from the air. Like it really comes down to just eating whole foods. Yep. And if you can keep it that simple, awesome. If you want to take it a step further and, you know, really try to stick with organic where you can, great, like grass-fed, grass-finished meats, you know, just all of those things are fantastic. It's just really trying to minimize sugar, processed foods. Like those are the things that are leading to a lot of the obesity that we're seeing in kids. That and lack of movement.
Yeah.
And if we can create routines that help ourselves and our families consistently move our bodies, it's good for our body and our brain.
Yeah. And we are the first example of that. Our kids, whether we like it or not, our kids do what we do. So if we sit around on our phones all day, then we can expect our kids to do the same. I think that leads into your morning summer routine.
Yeah, and this might be like a little extreme. My family has a tendency to sometimes be a little
bit on the extreme end. So she'll give you her example, and then I'll give you mine, which tends to be a little bit more moderate.
We love to kind of go through seasons as a family where we have like goals or different things, and we have a pretty unorthodox family schedule. There's just a lot. We are farmers, and we have a parkour jiu-jitsu gym, and I do other things, and this. And so anyways, we try to fit in our family time, like at fairly unorthodox times. So my husband this time of year works like 7 days a week, and we have some early morning time and some late evening time. And so one of the things that we've started doing since my boys are out of school is every day in the morning, we have certain things that they just know are like non-negotiables. And so right now, and we do it as a family, I sometimes don't run an additional mile because I won't get into the details.
Just give them what they
As
do.
a family, they run a mile every morning and they time it. And sometimes they want to take it slow. Sometimes they want to try to beat their mile time. They come back, they do a field workout, or we do a field workout, we should say, as a family. And then they have to read a minimum of 15 minutes. They need to write something, and they need to at least write one thing that they're grateful for. And it gets them outside. It gets them practicing gratitude. They'll read a verse or two of the Bible. And it starts their day kind of hitting the basics. And it doesn't take that long. We're talking like, you know, definitely less than an hour, sometimes less than 30 minutes, depending, obviously, the reading, you know, they might do after they eat. But before they even eat, they're out running their mile. They're getting their field workout. They're getting their body going. They're getting some water in because it makes them thirsty. It's, you know, rain or shine, they're outside. They have a little bit of sunshine hitting their face. And then they eat their breakfast. And sometimes they'll eat their breakfast while they're doing their reading. You know, we sit, we chat. Byron and I are drinking our coffee, and then he has to, you know, head out. And depending on what the day looks like for me, like they already feel accomplished in the morning. And our goal is, because those are the same goals we want to have for ourselves, is starting the day with movement, starting the day with gratitude, starting the day with sunshine. if you can somehow fit that into your schedule, even if you have an unorthodox schedule, it starts creating these little habits. And our hope is that as our boys get older, those are just things that they will naturally start their day, because it will hopefully help them be better, adjusted, healthy humans that are like goal centered. And so, you know, if they're not feeling good or something like that, we're not going to force it. Or if we're on vacation.
She's a real slave driver, this one. Just get out of bed. Go run your mile.
Yeah, and they do, like, it starts this and they actually look forward, not every day, most days, they look forward to it. Like, it's a fun thing that we do as a family. And then we have other things we do at night, and not running miles and things like that. But, like, it's just, I don't know. I think that the more we can start creating these little habits that we too do, that our kids see, that they get to be a part of, it can like create these little, you know, who knows what an impact that may or may not have on their future, but it feels good and it feels right. And those targets might change, but like we're always kind of doing different little things, and it's fun, and they want to do it. Yeah. Like, maybe not out of the gate every day, but they feel good.
Yeah, and I think that also, if you keep it in perspective, as long as they're having fun, then that's all that matters. Once it stops becoming fun, then you shift and you pivot and you do something else.
Totally.
And I'm going to go back, I've said it a few times today, about like, we are our kids' first example. And so I've had an early morning exercise routine since Berkeley, my daughter, who's 14, since she was 1, I think. When she turned 1, I was like, I gotta get some time for myself and exercise. And she's 14. She came to the gym with me this morning, and she has, in the summertime, she comes frequently. And she's like, she just wants to feel good. She wants to exercise. She loves the way she feels. My son has a gym membership to a gym in Jacksonville, and he goes to the gym almost every day. And it's like, I never like told them like, well, you need to go to the gym and you need to work out, or you need to, you know, make sure that you exercise every day. But they saw the example from Tyler and I, and they just knew. They're super active kids anyway. And so like, they're used to moving their bodies a lot. And I think that when summer came around and, you know, they aren't in like school sports or anything right now, that they, you know, they figured out a way to make it work for themselves. So it's really cool when you see those little seeds that you don't even necessarily realize that you've planted in your kids, and you see them fruiting and making this, you know, person that's making decisions that you're really proud of, is really cool. And so the things that Emmy said are super important in my house. My kids, I tell them they need to read every day. My son used to be a really avid reader, and he's gotten really busy, and the phone has kind of, unfortunately, has taken the place of his books. But I take their phones. You can do this. You're an adult, right? I take my kids' phones from them at night, and they read. Well, my daughter, she has a Kindle and she listens, because she really hates reading right now, but she'll come around. I'm sure of it. So anyway, so they read, you know, spend some time reading. They have a gratitude practice. It's so important. We talk about it all the time, how important it is for adults. It's just as important, if not more so, for our kids. And you see it playing out later on too, you know, like my daughter is so grateful for so many things, and she'll say it out loud, you know, she will thank people or tell them the things that she's grateful for about them, you know, and my son is slowly coming around. And
Asa's so thoughtful.
He's so thoughtful. He's like, it was my mom's birthday last week or the week before, and I didn't even know, and he took flowers up to her house and dropped them off. And
he was here to surprise my Scout, my youngest, on his birthday. We got home from dinner, and he was here and set up a whole little scavenger hunt for him, like all on his own. Like, I just so thoughtful. I'm sure all of our kids, like you guys too, you can find these like really wonderful things, and if we can play on those, and like, believe me, like, it's hard. I ask myself every day, like, what can I be doing better? How can I be a better mom? Like, what could we shift? Like, and I'm sure we all feel like that to some extent. But if we start to create these small habits, which it takes dedication, it takes some time, but it can be simple, and it honestly forces us to do the same things.
Yeah.
And we need to, like,
go outside and play with your kids. Jump on the trampoline. Go for a walk. Go for a family hike. Take the dog out for a walk, you know, make picking up the dog poop in the yard fun. Like, there's so many things that we can do as parents to get our kids outside and get them moving. And it's not just good for our kids, it's good for us too. And so I think that like having a handle on what your family is eating and then moving, those are the two things. It's simple. It is. And I think that those two things alone will have a profound effect on the well-being and the health of the upcoming generations and ourselves.
I didn't look at my notes at all, but I do want to make sure that because I had written myself a few notes about, which I think we probably hit on all of them, but I do think that a couple of things that we can all do to get our kids more involved that just opens the conversation more is, of course, creating some of those habits, some of those healthy habits that we as adults need to do, that we can model for our kids, that we can get them involved in. Have them start cooking with you. Like, a lot can be learned as a cook. And this is one thing that I've struggled with, because my youngest Scout is an amazing little baker. Like, it's so fun. He started his own little business, and him and I have talked a lot about this, because even though he'll make like non-glycemic or they're still high glycemic, but like a little bit healthier options sometimes, not all the time, he's like, well, gosh, I love to bake, but like, am I fueling the problem? Like, you know,
her kids, like, honestly, she's not making that up. Her kids are like, what did Hudson said something to me about wanting to be a productive, or
well-adjusted, productive human.
Yeah, citizen.
Oh, citizen.
He wanted to, and I was like, who are you?
But you know, like, include your kids. Like, have them cook with you. Have them understand ingredients and flavor and seasonings. Get in a habit of taking an after dinner walk if you can. Like, rain or shine, it's fun to walk in the rain.
It is,
like,
yeah.
And you start talking about things. Like, Haley and I are most productive when we have walking meetings, because your brain just works different. And in the evening, like, let your food digest while you walk a little bit. Like, it's a super cool habit to get into, and the conversations that take place in those times are they're amazing.
Some of the best.
Yeah, and so just include your kids in some of those things, because conversations happen, and we all learn together along the way. We learn from our kids learn from us. We start creating these habits, and before you know it, like, you're moving your body more, you're fueling your body more nutritiously, you're having more communication with your kids, you're all practicing gratitude together. You know, it's all the things that we need to be doing more of. And like, even just in having this conversation, like, man, I'm excited to do more of all of those things, because it's what life's all about, and it helps us all, adults, kids, be happier, more joyful, well-adjusted humans. Like, that's what we should be striving for.
Yeah.
You know, even right now, like, what's something you're grateful for? Ask your kids the same question. Like, today, ask them. Like, it's really healthy to think about that. Like, it shifts something.
Yeah.
Like, how much water have you drank today? Like, do a water challenge with your kids. Like, and you do it too. Like, they'll probably beat you. Like, you know, like, it's cool to think about. Like, make sure they have a water bottle that they enjoy. That's fun for them. Let them pick one out. Like, you know, it's all those little things. Go outside in the morning. That first of the morning sunshine is so powerful. Sunshine is so powerful, especially in the morning. It helps set your circadian rhythm. Like, it's all the simple, basic things. Like, it's getting back to basics.
Back to basics.
Getting back to basics.
Also, if you have older kids too, and like my kids, I think it's kind of a thing right now. They're super into like the Arizona iced teas and those things. Like, it's kind of a big deal. And like I said, my kids are teenagers. They buy what they want, and they often, you know, eat things that I wouldn't advise them to eat, which is totally fine. But sometimes they'll ask me, Mom, should I have this one or this? And I'll say, well, I don't know, which one is worth it? So if we just shift the language a little bit, and I ask myself this all the time, is it worth it? And if you just, instead of saying like, which one do you want? Yeah. Because like, of course you want one. If you shift it and say, well, which one is worth it to you? Then all of a sudden they think, well, and oftentimes, especially my daughter, she'll be like, well, none of them are really worth it. And I'm like, well, then let's not do it. Yeah. Save your money. Yeah. I also don't buy my kids their treats anymore. Like, my son has a job, my daughter babysits. And so if they want a treat, they have to spend their own money on it. And that often hurts. So a lot of times they'll say no, because it's not worth it for them to spend the money. So a couple other little tips for you. Her phone is about to die.
Yep, it is. So we're going to wrap this up with a pretty little bow. Thank you guys so much for, I know this is a sensitive subject, especially because as a society anymore, we all feel like sometimes we have to be so careful, especially when we're talking about something that could be perceived as shaming, and there is no shaming. Like, there isn't. This is about being healthy. This is about being the best version of ourselves we can be for our kids, and setting our kids up to be the best version of themselves they can be, preventing disease, reversing disease, being comfortable, being able to do the things that you love. And so really start simple. Start with a conversation. Start reducing or eliminating things like seed oils and sugar and unnecessary simple carbohydrates. Start like looking at a plate and talking about a balanced plate with some healthy proteins, some healthy fats, some healthy carbohydrates, like just simple things like that.
Move your body every day.
Yeah.
Get some good sleep. Go outside and get sunshine.
Hydrate yourself.
Yeah.
And do those things with your kids.
Yep. It's better for everybody. Everybody will be happier. Everybody will get along better. And it'll just make a more beautiful world.
It sure will. We have a bunch of free resources
Yep.
on our website, macromavens.life. You can click on the toolbox button, and there's a bunch of stuff there. And button.
I am trying so hard not to laugh when you do that. She was talking about her cat earlier today. She's like, yeah, this kitty. I'm like, who says that? Nobody says that.
I don't know why I pronunciate my teeth so much.
Button.
But
You can click on the button.
And if you're interested in learning more about the services that we offer, we'd love to chat with you. You can click on the hop on board button on our I tried real hard
button
on macromavens.life. It doesn't commit you to anything. It allows a coach to reach out, answer questions, see if we're a good fit. And we sure love getting to be here. And man, we're so thankful for our community. It's rad.
Yep. And everything we say is always out of love because we love people and we just want people to be the best versions
And
of
the
themselves.
things we're working on ourselves.
Absolutely, for sure.
Yeah.
Have a great week, you guys. We love you.
Love you.
See ya.
Bye.